Hey, there we are. Welcome back to the night shift. It's Friday, June 21st, 2:05 p.m. I'm sorry. A couple minutes late. I told you. It might be a little rocky in the beginning while we find our footing. I assure you. I have a team of highly qualified specialists looking into ways that we can streamline our live stream process. And give you the professional level of production you've come to expect from Night Shift. How's everyone doing out there this afternoon? TGIF, right? Aravend, am I saying that right? Welcome. All right, that's a track called Cosmic. Causmic. Cosmic. If you go on YouTube or YouTube Music and you type in, I'm sorry, is that right? Yeah, Cosmic. Causmic. The name of the track is Soul Searching. So if anybody's looking for that track, I had a few people ask, and hey, wow, that was smooth. Did it work? Here we go. Welcome, guys. Look, I'm trying my best to smooth out this process. It's a little complicated for me in the early days. I've got some new tools that are going to be arriving over the weekend. Hopefully I can get them set up by next week so that these live shows run a little bit smoother. I got a tight schedule today. I was up early, super early, working on the Night Shift store, which I cannot wait. I can't wait to show you. It's really great. It's awesome. The store looks awesome. The merch looks fantastic. I ordered some test pieces that are on their way to me, and I just don't feel comfortable launching the store until I have my test pieces delivered and I verified with my own two eyes that everything is correct and of the quality that you've come to expect from the Night Shift. So cool shirts, really cool shirts, some really nice graphic tees. I got a great new mug coming. I'm trying to do some vinyl decals and what else? Looking at doing some hats, maybe some cool print material. I don't know, but we're going to start really small, keep it simple, t-shirts and mugs, and we're going to go from there. I had I was contacted by a graphic designer named Cole Watkins, who is just a really fantastic graphic designer and just a great guy. And we got into a conversation. We started talking, and we hit it off, and quickly developed a shorthand in terms of what, you know, he's a fan of the show, a fan of the channel, and we talked about kind of like the vision for what we want to, or what I want to do with it. And then he had some really great ideas, and he put together some designs that I'm absolutely blown away by, and I know that you're going to love them too. So I can't wait for you to see them. But one of them is the new logo. You can see the graphic logo. This is called the Watchman logo. Let me see if I can do this. I'll switch back to the big one so you can see it. I told you we were going through a metamorphosis over here. Let's go Starfield. Here, let me switch over and I'll show you the big one. Let's do this. Yeah, it pops better on this background. There we go. This is the Watchman logo. I'm super excited about it. It's the new graphic logo. We have three actually that we're going to rotate through, but right now this one's my favorite, and I'll tell you a little backstory behind it. So this was designed by Cole Watkins, who's got some awesome stores that he has tons and tons of cool shirt designs that he does. That's just what this guy does. He's really really good at it. So I'll try to pull up his stuff and drop a link to that. But we were talking about kind of the vision for the channel and what the name means and what is Night Shift and what is that all about. And Night Shift, the name means a bunch of different things. One, it just sounds cool. So I mean, right out of the gate, it just sounds cool. But there's more to it than that. Night, it's always darkest before the dawn. This show is kind of about this transition between the old paradigm and the new paradigm. So there's a period of night between those two periods of shifting from one paradigm to the other. So it has a symbolic meaning in that sense. And nighttime is when you go out, you look up, keep looking up at the night sky. You might see something interesting. It's amazing how little people look up. And you can see, if you look at underneath night, where it says shift, the F hides a little secret arrow, which is pointing up at the sky. And in the sky, what do you see? A saucer. It's hovering over a mysterious figure with a flashlight. That is the Watchman. The Watchman is based on this really cool contact story. I can't remember the name of the gentleman involved in this, but it's a famous story. It's just not one of the most well-known ones. But let me bounce back here. And it's about this police officer who is called out to investigate some a strange sighting. He gets there, and in a field, he sees this disc that is landed in a field. He approaches the disc, and a being who looks like a human being, more or less, comes out of the craft and says to this police officer, "Are you the watchman over this place?" To which the officer replies, "Yeah, I guess so. Yeah." And then they have an exchange. And during this exchange, the being tells this police officer, "One day, watchman, you will see the stars like me, or you'll in your lifetime, you will live to see the stars." And it was this really interesting story. And it's stuck with me. I've always had this, like, I just love the iconography of this person with a flashlight walking into the darkness to try and investigate the mysteries and figure out what's going on. I think that represents symbolically all of us, certainly myself and you. If you're watching this show, you're into this stuff and you want to know more. No one really has all the answers, so we're left to kind of explore, speculate, and do our best to work with what we have, and that's symbolized by the Watchman. Let me do this again. Here you go. So that's the Watchman logo. That's going to be on the shirt. That's going to be on. I actually have 3 different shirts coming, and then that's going to be on the mug. If you want to get an email when this store does go live, you can go to teamnightshift.com. That's the other thing that we're launching. I was kind of soft launching it last week. It's up. Teamnightshift.com. That's our website. You can go there. It's going to be this kind of the center of the hub and spoke of the Night Shift empire, Night Shift Global Limited. And from that website, I'll use that as sort of the central point where everything gets organized and goes out from there. So if you go to teamnightshift.com and you scroll down to the bottom, it'll say join Team Night Shift, and you can put in your email address. If you put your email address in there, you can basically register for email updates from me. I'll try. I'm going to try to do them weekly, but it might be as infrequently as like every 2 or 3 weeks. It just depends on how much time I have in the week. I'm more or less a one person operation over here, and I have just taken on a lot more uh, work to try and build up this channel a little bit more. So, but I'm definitely going to put out a heads up when the store goes live. So if you're interested and you want to pick up some night shift merch, just as soon as I get my hands on the test pieces and verify that they're going to be cool, you'll be able to go there, place an order, and it'll get drop shipped right to you. And it's really exciting. So I can't wait to see how all this turns out. I hope you are too. What else? So today it's going to be what else? What other announcements? I want to talk about a few news items that I think are really interesting. And then I thought we would take about 10 minutes and watch the Ross Coulthart interview with Admiral Tim Gallaudet. It dropped yesterday. I haven't watched it yet. And I was going to do a separate video on this, but then I thought, well, why not just do it live? Right? So we'll just tack it on to today's show. Okay, let me organize myself here. Aravent, good. Cool name. Yaya. Am I saying that correctly? Please correct me if that's the wrong pronunciation. See, I'm hesitant to pronounce names if I don't want to get anybody's name wrong, and I always feel like such a doofus if I do. So please don't let me mispronounce your name. If I do it, just call me out. I'm looking over at the chat periodically, but if I don't glance at it right away, I might miss it. Timbo, that music is so relaxing. Thanks for sharing the name. Also, great show. Thanks, man. I'm still trying to figure out how to display the chat window in the stream. There's a way I've seen other people do it, where you can. All good, no worries. Okay, I'm going to assume that I'm doing that right. By the way, did you get that copper water bottle? That thing that I sent you, or are you still going with titanium? What are you doing for your water situation? Let me know. Okay. So there's a way I can do this, and I have to figure out what it is. If anybody knows in the meantime, please let me know. Timestamps, reactions, pop out chat, moderation activity, participants, community moderation. Oh man, this is way beyond me. I'm gonna have to like rope in some volunteers to maybe help with some of this stuff. We're looking at putting a Discord server together right now. That's it's kind. I have some work to do to kind of get the information to Brett to put this together, but we're going to try and get that launched soon in the next couple of weeks here, and hopefully we'll have more ways that we can kind of get together and communicate. Quick reminder, we're going to be doing live shows every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 p.m., at least for the rest of the summer. And then at the end of summer, I might go ahead and reevaluate that a little bit. But for right now, we're going to try Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and see how we do. Monday is going to be members only Monday. And that's where it's a smaller group of people who are members of the channel. We're going to get together, talk about some of the stuff that's going on, have a little bit more back and forth. It's going to be a little bit more informal and just a way of kind of connecting with you guys. So if you're interested in participating in that, you can become a member. It helps support the channel. It helps support me. I could definitely use it because I am burning this candle at both ends and in the middle. And it's just, this candle is just completely engulfed in flames. So before sparks shoot out of my head, I'm trying to spread myself as thin as possible without having an aneurysm and get this channel up to where it needs to be. I'd like to see us hit 10,000 subscribers very soon. So I've got a lot of work to do. But Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So Mondays, members only Monday, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Wednesdays and Fridays are going to be open to everybody. And that's 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., maybe 3:30, depending on what we're doing that day and how long we go. All right. So I've got some, just a couple quick news things I wanted to share with you, and a few clips. One of them is a a clip that I tried to get to last time and I just didn't have the time to do it. So I'm going to do it now. And I think it's a really captivating statement by a guy named Terence McKenna. And for those of you who know Terence McKenna's work, you know how captivating it is to just listen to him speak. This man can talk uninterrupted for an hour and a half about the most esoteric, complex topics, and he can do it in this poetic way that is just a joy to listen to. And in this one particular clip that we're going to look at, it's about 3.5 minutes long, but he basically talks about what he sees going on at this particular moment in human history, and how this connects to sort of the larger things that we're seeing today. Now, this interview happened in the early 90s. I think this is probably 1991 or 1992, somewhere back in that time. So it's not a new interview. But what he talks about in this particular clip is so relevant today and so prescient. I just think you have to see it. So we're going to take a quick look at this, and then we'll take a few news items and we'll bang those out one by one. Let me see if I can get this to play. All right. Here we go.
We have 14 years until this event, measured on the calendar. And, you know, a really common, ordinary way to describe the times that we're living in is that they're very, very chaotic, filled with acts of unspeakable evil. And at the same time, there's this sort of buzz and thrust of optimism. Everything from a guy like Peter Schwartz talking about the long wave, the big booming economy, breakthroughs in you know, educational levels and qualities of life. But it's definitely a dynamic where you've got extremes of good and evil in that way. Would you talk a little bit about the relationship between that dynamic as we go forward and the novelty continues to climax?
Well, novelty is not necessarily good or nice. Novelty is complex. That's what it is. And so I see really a concatenation of tendencies and forces here at the end. It's only going to get weirder. The level of contradiction is going to rise excruciatingly, even beyond the excruciating present levels of contradiction. So I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. And at that point, novelty theory can come out of the woods, because eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's just too nuts. It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. So between now and 2012, the next 14 years, I look for the invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, possible human immortality, and at the same time, appalling acts of brutality, genocide, race baiting, homophobia, famine, starvation, because the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed. The collapse of the socialist world, the rise of the internet, these are changes so immense, nobody could imagine them ever happening. And now that they have happened, nobody even bothers to mention what a big deal it is. The fact that there is no such thing as the Soviet Union, people never talk about it anymore. But when I was a kid, the notion that that would ever change was beyond conceiving. So the good news is that as primates, we're incredibly adaptable to change. Put us in a desert, we survive. Put us in the jungle, we survive. Under Hitler, we survive. Under Nixon, we survive. We can put up with about anything, and it's a good thing because we're going to be tested to the limits. The breakdown of anything, and this is why the right wing is so alarmed, because what they see going on is the breakdown of all tradition, all order, all sanctioned norms of behavior. And they're quite right that it's happening, but they're quite wrong to conclude that it should be resisted or is somehow evil. The mushroom said to me once, it said, "This is what it's like when a species prepares to depart for the stars. You don't depart for the stars under calm and orderly conditions. It's a fire in a madhouse." And that's what we have, the fire in the madhouse at the end of time. This is what it's like when a species prepares to move on to the next dimension. The entire destiny of all life on the planet is tied up in this. We are not acting for ourselves or from ourselves. We happen to be the point species on a transformation that will affect every living organism on this planet at its conclusion.
Wow. Right? If you've seen that clip before, maybe it's not 1991, 92. It sounds like it's actually a little bit later because he talks about the collapse of the Soviet Union being pretty far in the rear view. So that might have been mid 90s or even later. If anybody knows the date on that, let me know. But talk about nailed it. Not only nailed it, but the predictions he's making in this interview, which is like 20 years old or more, we're seeing them. It's going to get weirder and weirder and weirder. It's going to get so weird that people are going to have to start talking about how weird it is. That's where we are right now. And the stuff that he said about the mushroom told me that this is what it's like before a species departs for the stars. It's a fire in a madhouse. It's not a calm, orderly process. This is what it's like before a species transcends to the next dimension. Does that not sound precisely like where we're at right now? Isn't that crazy? I don't know how many psychedelic people are out there. I can tell you from my own personal experience, and I don't do a ton of psychedelics, but I had an ayahuasca experience that completely changed my life in Peru. And I mean, it changed everything. I stopped drinking after this. I got completely different mindset. My whole personality was affected in numerous ways. And I was shown some events that wouldn't happen until a few years later, some future events. And I really believe there is something to the notion that psychedelics allow the brain, the consciousness, to tune in to the right frequency to receive useful information from other layers of reality. I'm convinced that that's the case, that your brain is basically like a radio or a transceiver, and the psychedelic substances, depending on what they are, how they're prepared, and the way that they are used, can help you adjust your mind to basically float between those various dimensions or different levels of reality. And in my experience, I encountered beings that were intelligent, that I had exchanges with. I got downloads. I was exposed to information about my future. And later those things did happen. And it was shocking, to say the least. So there's much wisdom to be gained from this kind of work. And one of the directions I want to take the channel in going forward is looking at some of the work that's being done in psychedelic research and how that ties into our larger idea of what's real. I saw an interview recently with a subject matter expert on this who said that the electromagnetic spectrum, if you were to lay it out in a line, the length of the Mississippi River, the fraction of that humans can perceive would be about an inch and a half, somewhere down towards the bottom. And it leaves this tremendous amount of the spectrum for all kinds of other things to take place. We've heard recently that a lot of talk about a shadow biosphere, that these things might be existing right alongside us inside of a shadow biosphere that we can't see and we can't access. What if that shadow biosphere is invisible to us and we don't have the senses to really pick up on it, but with the right technology and the right equipment, we could see it? And what if what we're seeing, at least to some small degree, is instances of beings becoming visible, choosing to become visible in our range of the EM spectrum? Have you ever seen like a shadow person? I know this sounds weird, but a shadow person. Have you ever seen that? Like where you see, like you're sitting in your house and there's no one else around. It's just you, and you'll see a shadow just walk across the room. I've seen this. I've seen this numerous times. I've seen it in my place as recently as 2 weeks ago. See it all the time. My wife and I have a joke about the shadow that just lives in our house. And I've been in various rooms where I've felt the presence of a person standing behind me that I was convinced my wife was in the room with me, standing 2 feet behind me. I've said her name and I turn around and there's no one there. I've had that happen a bunch of times. So I just think that's really interesting. I think the way that McKenna phrases that ties into a much bigger conversation about what we can see, what is real, what is not real, how do we define real, as Morpheus would say. And can you modulate your perception of reality chemically? To some extent, that must be what medicine people from indigenous cultures do, right? That's their expertise, is to walk between worlds, to travel from one world to another and then come back with information that they can use to help people here. So I think insofar as the UFO phenomenon gets stranger and stranger the further out you go from the nuts and bolts out into the woo, I believe there's a large component of this that ties into our perception of reality, the way we experience it. And I believe that there are ways that we can probably use technology to help us widen our perception a little bit more so that we can see some things that we might not actually have normally been able to see. Robert Monroe, founder of the Monroe Institute, talked about this a lot. He developed an entire protocol called HemiSync, where he basically, through using really great headphones, they play slightly different frequencies in each ear. And the two frequencies, your brain tries to make up the difference, in a manner of speaking. And it causes your brain to basically lock into a synchronized state where the two hemispheres become synced. And when they're synchronized, it makes meditating much more powerful, much more effective. And according to the Monroe Institute, you can induce an out-of-body state this way. And people can actually induce this out-of-body state and then astral project their consciousness from place to place, time to time, and bring back information. Not only bring back information, but encounter beings. He talks in his work at length about this. In fact, there's an entire paper that was put out by the CIA. They hired him to help develop this program for them. And there's a great Vice article on it. If you search Robert Monroe, Monroe Institute, CIA, and you run a DuckDuckGo news search, that will come up. And it's amazing. In that paper, they talk about how they've basically figured out, at least to some extent, the number of dimensions that cross over one another that we can interact with from here. And they've done the work on this. And it's a wild concept. So if you find that, take a look. Let me know what you think. Timbo, name check the Commodores. Yeah, I love that song. The Night Shift. It's also a great song by the Commodores. If anybody wants to look that one up, it's good. It's worth it. Max, I can relate to your logo. My son is a police officer on the night shift, graveyard shift. That's right. Oh, cool. Psychedelics are a form of technology. Indeed. Bonds, that's a great point. Tyler, Clint, do you ever get annoyed when listening to people like Admiral Gallaudet and Carl Nell? They clearly know way more than they say, and they always say things like, we need to investigate. What's going on? Oh, we need to investigate what's going on but they know that people in the government know full well what is going on and what we are dealing with. Do I get annoyed by that? Occasionally, but it's complicated. I understand the desire in the community, because I feel this way too, to just get on with it already. Like, someone take one for the team and just like, let's find out what's going on. And you want someone to just go on camera and spill their guts. But the trouble with that is that's been happening for 30, 40, 50 years. That's been happening since Roswell. All of the whistleblowers, everybody who's come forward, people with just mind-blowing credentials, with crazy stories, and every single time they come out, Stephen Greer's channel, his YouTube channel, is packed with videotaped interviews with people. If you think what David Grush had to say was a shocker, you haven't heard anything. Go to Stephen Greer's channel and go back and watch some of the old interviews from back years and years and years ago. And these are people who worked for EG&G, that worked for Lockheed, that worked for Skunkworks and developed a lot of this technology. There are people who did some of the hands-on work, and they're straight up telling you what happened and whatever happened to that. I mean, it's buried on the internet. It's really hard to find. The information's out there, but it doesn't change anything. So even if Carl Nell came out tomorrow and was like, this is what's going on, I don't think he's going to do that. But if he did, it probably wouldn't change anything. And if Tim Gallaudet did it, it probably wouldn't change everything. Now, if they all did it on the same day in front of Congress or something like that, some enormous event, maybe. But Stephen Greer even tried that with the National Press Club. He trotted out all these whistleblowers and had them give their testimony on camera to the National Press Club. It was a huge event, and it was like crickets. So if you're a UFO person, you can still find it, but it's interesting, it's fascinating, but it hasn't moved the needle on any legislation. I think what has to happen, and I think what they're leaning towards, is Congress has to reestablish oversight over these programs. See, the thing is, Congress doesn't have proper oversight over any of this stuff. They've been rubber stamping defense budget increases for decades, and they're bought and paid for. So they're just paid to really look the other way. Their stock portfolios explode. They make a fortune off of all this stuff. There's big money in just shutting up and greenlighting whatever defense spending program is rolling through your district. So there's a tremendous incentive for them to let these programs just go, and they make their next election cycle. But meanwhile, these programs have spiraled out of control and become these behemoths, and we don't even know how much money is being spent on them. We have no idea, can't even get an accurate audit of the Department of Defense to figure out what's going on. So step one is get Congress up to speed and maybe scare them a little bit so that they take the next step and reestablish oversight. And from there, we can start incrementally working towards getting stronger and stronger legislation, and then hopefully reeling back in some of this control that was lost. But I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that the program, whatever that may entail, exists in the quasi-corporate private sector, overlapping with government, but not within government. I think government has limited input into what's going on, and then a lot of the stuff is really happening in private aerospace. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where we go from there. Let's go back to your chat. Profound experiences. Yeah. Find the others like you. Starslinger, welcome. You haven't missed much. We're just catching up here, but you can go back and catch up. They're around us all the time. Steve Music, hey man, how you doing? From down under. They gave me a loaf of bread full of LSD and magic mushrooms without really knowing. I was told it was full of X. It did the trick for me. Just in time, saw a shadow person walk across a hallway in the early morning. No sound, just walked through the walls. Yeah, If when you've seen one, you know seen a shadow person. Binaural beats. Yeah, I use binaural beats. When I meditate, I put on noise canceling headphones, binaural beats. I even take theanine. I take 400 milligrams of theanine, which is an amino acid, I think, that's found in green tea, and it lowers the kind of the volume on your brain, and you can just sort of drop into a. It's why monks drink green tea to meditate, theanine. But you can take it as a supplement. So I take my protocol is I'll take like 200 to 400 milligrams of theanine, put on binaural beats. I'll set a particular frequency, like 417 hertz. Lay down with a blindfold, comfortable couch or bed, and then for about 30 minutes, I'll just try and get into that flow state. It works. I believe there's now a wearable EEG that you can put on your head, and it will record your brainwave patterns. And there's an app that goes with it, and you can actually track your brainwaves, and that can be used as a kind of biofeedback. You can meditate until your brainwaves are actually. You can record your brainwaves actually shifting. On that note, there's a really fascinating little clip. Every time I talk about stuff like this, I go off on a tangent, so I apologize. But there's a great clip from the David Lynch Foundation, Transcendental Meditation, where they take a trained transcendental meditator and they have them on an EEG, and in the moment they have this person, they're showing their brainwaves live, and then they have them do the transcendental meditation techniques, and in real time you watch their brainwaves just go and lock into this like trance state. It's amazing. They've done it with Buddhist monks too. They've had monks put into MRIs and they've scanned their brains. The Dalai Lama actually put a lot of effort into researching how this works. So there's a ton of research into this, and there's definitely something there. I want to know what this person, Starslinger, says. I want to know what this person told you they knew about Dan Burish. Very interested in hearing more info on that, as I think Dan is pretty legit personally, but would love to hear more on him. Dan Burish is alive, apparently, from what I've been told, from the person. I hate when people do this, but according to my source, according to the person I spoke with, Dan Burish lives and is maintaining an extraordinarily low profile and wants very little to do with getting caught up in the circus of the UFO community. And I completely understand that if that's true. I completely get it. I have another video. I just did this early this morning on Dan Burish. This one is Michael Schratt giving a presentation about Dan Burish, and this presentation includes like a 45-minute keynote filled with CAD drawings and illustrations of the stuff that Dan Burish talked about in that initial interview. If you're interested in that story, part 2 of that is going to drop, I hope, Saturday, maybe Sunday, depending on how fast I can get this put together. Like I said, I just recorded it this morning, like 30 minutes before I did this one. That's actually why I was late starting this. I'm going to try and get that done and get it out by the weekend. So we'll see. But if you want to learn more, stick with me. We're doing a whole series on Dan, and we're going to try and figure out as much as we can, as much as possible. Avi, astral travel often. Yes, there are beings there. Yeah, Robert Monroe is convinced there are, or was convinced there were. Our sighting was in daylight. Yeah, Starslinger, it's easy for them to make you look like a clown if you just come out and spill the beans without going through proper channels. That's right. Heather, I checked out the merch website and I want all the shirts. You are my absolute favorite. Thank you. Thank you for the great work you're doing. I'm a night owl and I'm enjoying your show so much. Well, thanks. That's really nice to hear. I'm glad you're enjoying the show. Uh, theanine. Yeah. Theanine. Theanine. There's a brand called Now, Now Now brand. I use Now theanine from, I just get it on Amazon, but a bottle of like 200 milligram capsules is like, it shouldn't be more than 12, $15. Lost a lot of interest in this topic due to little progress, but keeping an eye on it. Any progress you can discuss? Sammy Johnson. What project are you talking about, Sammy? What topic are you talking about? All right, I gotta turn my attention back to the camera. I'm following your chats, and it's really captivating. Um, okay, last thing, man, I gotta work on my timing. I have so many things I want to cover, but I'm just not going to get to all of them. Let's see if I can do this. Nope, that's not it. Bear with me, gang, for 1 second while I figure this out. Oh, okay, here we go. All right, that's not going to work. We're going to skip the news stuff for today. Don't worry about it. We'll come back to it. There's a ton of shit going on. It's exciting, but I think the Colt Art interview is more interesting. So let's take a look at that. And we'll pick this up on next week when I have some more time. I'm spread too thin today, gang. I apologize. All right, so we're gonna watch. Where is it? Colt Art and Tim Gallaudet. Here we go. Let me switch cameras. There we go. Let me turn off this one. That's better. Okay, so let's see what Ross asks Admiral Tim Gallaudet and what Tim has to say. I'm really interested. I haven't watched this, so we're going to be watching this together for the first time. Here we go.
Welcome to Reality Check. I'm Ross Coulthart on assignment for News Nation in America. Today we're in Arizona on a story I can't tell you about, but I can assure you it's a goodie. So back in November last year at the Seoul conference, I interviewed Tim Gallaudet, a former admiral in the US Navy and also an oceanographer with the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. He told me why he believes the UAP cover-up is real. So today, here's an opportunity for you to hear the full interview, including sections of the interview we recorded but couldn't air last year because of time. I hope you enjoy it. Tim Gallaudet has spent a career serving his country. First in the Navy, working in areas like aircraft carrier combat operations and assisting Navy SEAL teams during counter-terrorism operations, according to his official biography. More recently, he served as acting administrator of the Commerce Department's agency, which forecasts weather and monitors ocean and atmospheric conditions, where he analysed the science behind weather and other phenomena. So, Tim, you've said publicly that you think UFOs, UAPs, are the story of the century. Now, I happen to agree with you, but why do you say that?
Oh, absolutely. We're being visited by non-human intelligence with technology we really don't understand, and with intentions we don't understand at all either. And this is just one of those great big questions. Are we alone or not? And we're learning we're not.
Now, that really does surprise me to hear that from a former very high-ranking flag officer in the US Navy, to actually say you're stating categorically that you believe NHI, non-human intelligence, are real.
Absolutely, I do.
Why do you say that?
Well, for a number of reasons that have been coming out. Congress has been informed and they've drafted legislation and they've passed legislation, for example, to establish a DoD office to look at it. They did the same, NASA did the same with a UAP study team. And we know from the UAP hearing this summer that there are crash retrieval programs. And I have 100% confidence that the testimony by David Grush and the other witnesses is accurate.
Wow. That's a big thing for you to say that, isn't it?
It is. It's astonishing. And that's why I wrote that article in The Hill. I don't understand why more people are not interested in this. I mystify the lack of intellectual curiosity.
You know, the moment for me.
I don't think there's a lack of intellectual curiosity, Admiral. I think it's just that there's an active campaign to interfere with the messaging on this topic. And when someone such as yourself comes forward and makes such a earth-shattering statement, look, there was a thing called Operation Mockingbird. You can look it up. Go on DuckDuckGo, type in Operation Mockingbird, and see what comes up. You can go on YouTube. You can find videos of the hearings that were held on this. Operation Mockingbird was an illegal operation where the CIA was basically plugged into newsrooms across the United States, and it's against their charter to use to manipulate American public opinion domestically. But they did it anyway. And what they would do is they had people in newsrooms and editors and people on the payroll. In fact, I believe Anderson Cooper over at CNN, in his own book, if I'm not mistaken, says that he had been looking at joining the CIA, but decided instead to become a journalist, which is a really interesting career decision if you think about it. So their Operation Mockingbird was an attempt to control the flow of information and the perception of information and the American mindset. This was a real operation. It took place. It was discovered. It was these people were called in front of Congress to testify about it, and you can go there and find it. And I think that that's what's going on. You're seeing one huge faction that has been in control for a long time, struggling to maintain that control. Who has the shoot down program for the flying discs? The CIA. That's who's in charge of the shoot down program. The Office of Global Access, that goes through the CIA. So, there's a lot going on there. It's interesting.
Was the Schumer Amendment when the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, put into proposed legislation language referring to non-human intelligence over 20 times.
Exactly. That's the statement. And Congress doesn't act at that level without information.
Clearly, you believe there's a cover-up.
Yes.
Why are they covering it up? I mean, you're probably one of the more highly cleared public officials from the military, past serving, who's basically come out publicly and said, you think this is real. Why do you think there is this cover-up? What are they concealing?
Well, sure. This is technology we're still trying to learn about, and it could give us an advantage in any military conflict. So that's a good reason to not disclose the nature of the technology. And I think for the foreseeable future, we don't want to release and disclose all of the technology that we've recovered. However, I think it's about time that we do disclose that we are in contact with non-human intelligence. That's what needs to be put out there in the public.
That's a great point. Some of this technology, look, this is what I think most people would, I don't know, tell me, what do you guys think? I'm okay with some secrecy. I'm okay with that. I really don't, I understand it. It makes sense to me. Whether or not you think non-human intelligence is malevolent or benevolent or neutral, people aren't. And there's no question that we are constantly engaged in this geostrategic battle with other powers around the world. And I'm not saying what the United States has done historically is all that fantastic. Certainly we've we've fucked up a lot of stuff. No question. But that's the world we're in. That's showbiz. And there are people out there who would use this technology for all kinds of different things, not all of them good. So it makes sense from a game theory perspective that when you get your hands on some of this stuff, you need to learn how it works, not just because of your own adversaries, but you don't know what's coming in the form of visitation from non-human intelligence. If we don't know much, we may be better off building up this technology so that we have some way of asserting ourselves and defending ourselves. If we are going to be brought into a galactic community, we're going to need to understand the technology to build these ships and this and interact at that level. So it would make sense to me. It makes sense to me that there would be an effort underway, a secretive effort to crack as much of the technology as possible. And as you make incremental progress, decade after decade, farming out some of that technology to our corporations, where it filters out into larger society. This is what Colonel Phil Corso said in his book, The Day After Roswell. He talked about this. He said that was our job. Our job was to go through and give the technology to IBM and give it to Hewlett Packard and give it to various General Electric, whoever, and have them start to work on bits and pieces of it. And what's happened since then? Look around. Have you noticed anything different lately? Have you noticed that the whole fucking world is about to take off at light speed? It's kind of weird, right? Like, look at the exponential progress that's happened in the computer sciences just over the last 10 years. Then go back and look at the chart for the last 50 years. It's insane. We have gone from horses and wagons in like 125 years to we've got robots that can fold your laundry, and we're driving around drones on Mars. And that's just the stuff that we know about. For thousands of years before that, life was basically the same. Like, it more or less, like it sucked. And if you got an infected paper cut, you died. And most people didn't live past 40. And look at us now. We're talking about David Sinclair at Harvard is talking about curing aging. They've actually done this in the lab. They've taken mice, the eyes of elderly mice, and they have induced in them, they've activated the genes that switch on that entire complex organ back to a reverted younger state. And they've done this in the lab. They've done it a bunch of different ways. And this is stuff that Ray Kurzweil says, if you're alive in 5 years, you might be able to live forever. They may just have the technology to start, calls it longevity escape velocity. Every year we add a little bit more than 1 year to your average life expectancy. And before you know it, we get super intelligent AI. And then we have the keys to even more complex regeneration techniques. All of that technology, all of that development, all of that stuff that's been happening in the background, I'm convinced at least some of it is originating from some of this technology that we got. So in that sense, you can look around and kind of see that some of it has been allowed to get out into our society, and it has changed the world. If you believe, as I do, that that's what's going on. So the question then becomes, where's the real game-changing technology? Like, we don't just need faster computers and more of them. We need free energy. We need anti-gravity. Well, that kind of stuff upsets the apple cart for the people that run the real world, really run it. And I think we all agree that those people aren't interested in giving up that control just yet. The problem with that is that we're running up against a wall here. We're coming up against a real hard deadline. Like, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but the planet is on fire. Like, it's on fire right now. Out in California, it's on fire. See these wildfires? Wildfire season is here again. Wildfire season. This is like one of the seasons now. Summer around the world. Didn't 1,000 people just drop dead in Mecca just the other day from the heat? You see this all the time. Now, I don't know, friends of mine, people in Europe, how it's being reported over there. But here in the States, like, we don't even really like to talk about climate change because it just makes some people uncomfortable. So we don't talk about it. It's not really, like, the news doesn't want to cover it. It's just not an issue. But look around. Old Testament weather is coming. They're talking about creating a new category for hurricanes that accounts for the increased strength of new hurricanes. So we're up against this ticking time clock of biosphere collapse, runaway greenhouse gas tipping points, the methane coming out of the melting permafrost in Siberia. They can see this from space now. There's satellites looking down, seeing these methane plumes in the Arctic Ocean. There's bubbles of methane coming up out of the ground. Methane is a number of times more powerful of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And we've heated up our planet so much that the methane that's trapped in permafrost, Arctic permafrost, and deep beneath the ocean surface, guess what? That shit is melting and it's coming out. And when that stuff hits the atmosphere, it's not just a little bit, it's gigatons of methane. There's a thing called a methane burp that some climate scientists are terrified of. And if a methane burp happens, within a few years, it could end life on this planet. It could raise the temperature catastrophically high. Imagine 10 degrees in like a few years, what that would do. So we're up against this ticking time clock, and I have a suspicion in my gut. My sense is, I have no way to verify this, but that some of the push for disclosure that you are seeing right now is motivated by the scientists and engineers who are looking at the data, and they have kids, and they're just going, my kids have to grow up in this world. It's just, at some point, someone's got to get this technology out there. It's shit or get off the pot time, right? We have to make a decision about what kind of, this is what I'm saying. I said this in my last video about the direction of this channel. Like, what is Night Shift about, right? It's about this species. We have to get our shit together. We have to make a decision. We have to decide if we want to live or die. We have to decide if we want to thrive or if we want to fail. We have to make a decision. The great filter of climate catastrophe, of nuclear Armageddon. These are things that are avoidable. These are avoidable. And the leadership we have is not up to the task. Look at these fucking people. They are not up to the task. They have no clue what they are doing. And we need better leadership. We need better minds on this. We need smarter people thinking about this more. We need to take on some of these challenges, and we need to stop worrying so much about the profit margins of these companies and these fucking billionaire babies that just bitch and whine, Elon, I'm looking at you, all the time about how much they're not getting or how much they deserve or this or that, and who's on Twitter or whatever. Like, we've got to pull it together, people, as a planet, as a species. We have to decide what's important, what's not. We need to realize that money's not real. It's made up. It's a fake invention that whenever they need more of it, they just print up a few $1 trillion and they go do whatever they want. And yet when it comes to you or me or anyone else who has regular day-to-day life and you just have needs like education or medical care, in the United States, we have no universal health care. I had to go to the emergency room a couple weeks ago. I got a bill in the mail from the ambulance. I took an ambulance. I got a bill for like $1,000 just to take a ride to the emergency room. The emergency room's 4 minutes away from where I live. I could walk there. So this system is just bonkers. It makes no sense. And I think more and more people are starting to realize that. And I think that everyone, if you're watching this channel, you clearly have a sense that something is wrong. And so what this push for disclosure, it's not coming from nowhere. Either there's only a few things it could be, right? They're coming and they're going to be here soon. And when they get here, we're going to have some explaining to do. According to John Ramirez, that's what's going on. According to some people like John Lear and others, there is a contact event planned for the near future, and they are trying to get their ducks in a row for this. Or it could be the other thing I'm talking about, climate collapse. If you're a scientist, if you're an engineer, if you're a data expert, if you're a meteorology expert like Admiral Gallaudet, and you're looking at the data and you're just looking around going, we haven't done anything, not really, to change the trajectory of where we're going. We need to do this yesterday, not 10 years from now. We should have done this 30 years ago. We're already going to blow past 1.5 degrees C global heating. If you look at the temperature charts for the ocean right now, they're off the chain. They're crazy. So I think that's what's going on. I don't know. Let's get back to the clip.
You very prominently sat right behind Ryan Graves in the House Oversight hearing earlier this year. You made a point of being seen to support Ryan Graves, the former fighter pilot, David Fravor, the former fighter pilot, and David Grush, the former Pentagon intelligence officer for the NGIA. Why did you take such a public position?
Right. Well, all those officers are speaking out about the phenomena and the need to study it scientifically more and take policy measures. For example, Ryan stood up a nonprofit called the Americans for Safe Aerospace with a very worthy mission to release more information and get pilots to start reporting and really understand the nature of UAP for aerospace safety. That's a very worthy cause. Now, one of my jobs in the Navy, I was the chief meteorologist of the Navy at the time when Ryan was encountering the UAP off the U.S. East Coast. And when I saw that these were occurring, and I think people know that I received a secret email with the Go Fast video attached to it from my boss's operations officer, where I learned now that these were happening and occurring in training airspace and causing near midair collisions. So that safety issue is important, and I couldn't believe, well, I understood why, but the Navy didn't do anything about that, and then they actually pulled back that email from my computer on the secret network because of the classification issues that we were just talking about.
Let's just think about what he said there. First of all, Ryan Graves said in numerous interviews, he said that they saw these things out there every day. Every day. Not sometimes, not once in a while, every day. He describes a black cube inside of a transparent sphere where the corners of the cube touch the sphere. He describes seeing these things in their training areas all the time. Gallaudet talked about cases where the Navy had picked up ships that were the size of bigger than our aircraft carriers, moving at 10,000 miles an hour underwater. Insane things like this. But Ryan Graves said that it could be interpreted as some form of, it was Lou Elizondo, preparation of the battlefield. Why are they so interested in our training exercises? Why are they always loitering around our training airspace? Why are they loitering around all our nuclear assets? It's not necessarily just because they want to keep us from blowing ourselves up. I hope that's the case. But what if that's not the case? Like, why are we just assuming that so many people just assume that's the case? I don't know that, I haven't seen that case made convincingly just yet. But anyway, going on with Tim Gallaudet, they had a secret email chain on their super secret Navy network between himself and a number of other officers, and it was wiped off their server. Someone else came in and took that email. They had already had the chain going, and then someone else came in and pulled that email. That's crazy. Sage Sleuth, thank you, by the way. You are too kind, and that is awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat. All right, let's carry on.
Shouldn't there be, philosophically, shouldn't it be really important that somebody certainly at your level in the Navy be allowed to talk openly to your colleagues about the flight safety risks that these kind of things are posing?
Absolutely. This is a safety issue.
So why do you think they tried to suppress knowledge of that video?
Well, it's the overclassification issue that we've touched on, that these UAP and the crash retrieval objects are classified, and it's really kind of a Cold War legacy of overclassification.
Tim, I have to say, I think a lot of people sitting back home will be scratching their heads going, wow, a former flag officer in the US Navy, a former rear admiral, is talking about the existence of a non-human intelligence. They're probably baffled as to why you've reached that conclusion. Is there something you know from your briefings as an officer, secret intelligence that you obtained?
To be fair, and I love Ross, and I think he's doing yeoman's work. This is when the dust settles and the smoke clears, I think he's going to be one of the heroes of this moment. But he is teeing up these questions like a pro. He obviously knows all the answers ahead of time. Like, this is such a curated interview. It's just funny.
How have you come by this conclusion?
A few reasons for that, Ross. First off, I had a job where I was the superintendent of the U.S. Naval Observatory, and I had a team of astrophysicists that monitored the stars and made star catalogs. And I learned a lot about astrophysics then, and I came to appreciate how large the universe is. And you just cannot conclude when you know that there's 200 to 300 billion stars in our galaxy and there's hundreds of billions of galaxies. To think that we're alone is incredibly arrogant, for one. And then two, as I mentioned, I saw on a secret email the Go Fast video, in 2015, I believe, and then that just, I knew that was not our technology.
Are you disappointed that the US government's not doing more data-driven empirical research investigating UAPs?
I am. I think it's time now, and with the Soul Foundation coming out in its inaugural symposium here, this is exactly what we're trying to do, is make policy recommendations to the US government to begin more systematic scientific study of UAP in a number of ways. And what Soul is looking at is both hard science, trying to acquire some of the materials we have from the crash retrieval program so we can learn more about that technology, which could have incredible benefits to society, as well as some of the humanities aspects. So things like sociology and anthropology and some of the, I guess, ethics issues possibly.
The problem, Tim, is that a lot of the government is still...
Sociology and anthropology are really interesting specialties to bring into a conversation about this. And it only seems like you would want to bring those into the conversation if there was some, I mean, maybe there are other reasons, but it seems like you would really, if you knew there was going to be some kind of a contact scenario or a possible contact scenario, then you definitely want to have an anthropologist and a sociologist on board for sure. And certainly you'd want to talk to them anyway about just like the way the public might react. But I don't know. What other experts would you want to bring in on this? Who's your dream team? Like who is your ultimate dream? If you could put together the dream team of people that would deal with this, if you could assemble a team of say 5 or 6 people, and that group of 5 or 6 people would have access to everything, but it was only them that had the access, and then they had to come back and help explain it to the rest of us. What 5 or 6 people do you think would be the best to put on this? Let me know in the comments.
In absolute denial. I mean, you talk as a fact about a crash retrieval program, and we're talking here about retrieved non-human technology, aren't we?
Yes.
And yet there are people in the government, like until very recently the Pentagon's spokesperson on UAPs, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, is still saying he's seen no credible evidence of this phenomena. What do you say to that?
So what you have going on right now are, again, legacy classified programs, special access programs, and without congressional direction and White House policy, that's not going to change. And so I don't criticize, for example, Sean Kirkpatrick, because he's just a good soldier doing what he's told to do. The people there has to be legislation, so the Schumer Amendment is just a must-do. And then there has to be the White House issuing policy. And right now, it's not coming from Kirkpatrick, it's coming from the White House, because the DOD, the Secretary of Defense, doesn't do anything that is counter to the White House policy. And they've obviously, to me, have decided on a policy of non-disclosure.
Does anyone here think that either of the 2 presidential candidates that are Donald Trump or Joe Biden, I mean, RFK I don't think is going to be seriously a contender, but of the presidential candidates that we have to choose from, do you think any of them would actually move the needle on this? I worry that, Joe Biden doesn't even look like he knows what room he's in, and Donald Trump is a maniac. Like, if he did it, if he disclosed, it would just be, he'd find some way to fuck it up. I'm positive. I wonder what you guys think, though. Is there a presidential candidate that you can imagine? Jesse Ventura would probably do it if he came out. Bernie Sanders, maybe? I don't know. Who would?
Can I ask you this? I can understand why it might be decided by very senior people in the Defense Department that we shouldn't reveal technology because it's a weapon, a potential weapon. It's a potential advantage in a future war. You can understand that, can't you?
Absolutely. I think some of the technology should remain classified. We don't want it to get in the hands of our adversaries. However, the fact that we're being visited by non-human intelligence, that is what I think needs to be disclosed. Now, granted, it's not an easy thing for a government to do, because then they're going to admit that they don't really know what they are or their intentions, and it makes us look vulnerable. True. But I think as a society, we're ready for this. We've turned that corner.
Why is the Soul Foundation so important?
Right. So we're at a time now where previously UAP have been pretty much received stigma and skepticism, and we're changing that. We're at an inflection point in our understanding of this phenomena, and Soul is coming out now to advance the scientific study, the education for the public, collaborative sharing of insights from academia, and then policy recommendations to encourage transparency by our government.
What sort of research would you like Sol to do?
Well, I'm of course interested in the technology aspects of the UAP phenomena. That's fascinating to me, but there are other elements again. I mean, the sociocultural, I guess, implications are great. We're not alone. This is what we're learning. That in itself is something worthy of deep and great study.
You know, it's amazing. I think a lot of us watching on would think that somebody at your level of seniority in the US Navy and then in NOAA, I would have thought you would have been briefed into something like this program.
Oh, no. Their special access programs are very tightly restricted. And so you have to look at what one's job is and that need to know, right? If they have a classification or a clearance at a certain level, and then do they have a need to know? Those are the two prerequisites. In my job as the oceanographer of the Navy, for example, it really wouldn't have made sense for me to have been read into these crash retrieval programs.
The obvious question then is, clearly the government knows a lot more than it's letting on. Here's Sol starting out doing virgin research, and yet the best research is probably hidden inside some of these special access programs. Would you like to see the government sharing more of that data?
Absolutely, and that's the purpose of the Schumer Amendment. And that's what we want to see, is we want this panel that it directs to convene and review these programs and make a determination on what can be released or disclosed without compromising national security.
Now, Tim, I don't think it's a coincidence that the jet fighter pilots who came forward are US Navy. There's a lot of US Navy behind the push for transparency. Is the US Navy more switched on to the need for transparency and disclosure on the UAP issue than the, say, let's guess, the Air Force perhaps?
Well, the statistics of disclosure certainly make that the case. And we've seen that with Ryan Graves and David Fravor, for example, Alex Dietrich.
Why is the US Navy different from the US Air Force on disclosure?
Right. Well, I think Chris Mellon wrote an op-ed, I believe it was in Politico, but you'll have to check, about this, about the Air Force not disclosing at a level like the Navy. And I'd speculate, but having been in the Navy for 32 years and knowing how the two services operate, I think it's safe to say there's the cultural differences. You have a service culture in the Navy that is about going out to sea at ships and having to make decisions on your own without higher headquarters permission. Whereas the Air Force, being located at bases primarily, and many of them are in the U.S., there's more of a hierarchical mindset. And so they are just afraid to basically make a bold statement about what they know.
So it's official. Sailors are more honest than flight flyers.
I don't know about honesty, but I'll say they're less risk averse.
Tim Gallaudet, thanks very much.
Thank you.
That's a really great point that I hadn't considered. Here, let me switch back to, here we go. That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. The culture between the two branches. Yeah, there's definitely a culture difference. If anybody else served in the Air Force or the Navy and wants to speak to that, I'd love to know more about that. But also the Air Force has spent the last 75, 80 years trying to, well, not 75, but ever since the Air Force was created, it's spent all of that time telling us that none of this stuff was real and that there was no there, and that was all just swamp gas. So to go back now would be pretty embarrassing. And would also call into question, like, how much control of the skies does the Air Force actually have if all this stuff is happening right under their nose? So let's go back to your chats and see what's going on. Christian, welcome. Sage Sleuth, I'd like free energy, but first I want people to be kinder, the planet's cleaner, and know what the beings actually are. I agree. TK, I'd like to point out Elon has his faults, but he too is being held back and led astray by much of the political establishment, military industrial complex. I wouldn't be surprised if they teased out some stuff to Elon for SpaceX. He is a huge military contractor. SpaceX, that's what they do. They're building a classified satellite network for the military right now. A lot of the stuff that's going on in Ukraine is wrapped up in what Starlink satellites are doing. So, yeah, I can tell you what Elon wants to build the internet to Mars so that when there is a colony there, he controls the communication nodes between here and there. I think that's what's going on. I think that's what SpaceX is really ultimately trying to do. So it wouldn't be a stretch to believe that maybe SpaceX gets access to some exotic materials, maybe a few little trinkets that are really like beneficial if you're in a race against Jeff Bezos to dominate the next space race. And for that, you have to be silent and not talk about any of this stuff. I don't believe Elon when he says there's nothing going on. I don't. Bob Bigelow is a billionaire who I do believe. He's also an aerospace billionaire, Bigelow Aerospace, and he talks openly about this stuff. So I don't know. That's an interesting point. Trump would do something if he could put his branding on it. Is the art of the deal a good playbook when humanity is at stake? Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. We don't need, that's not the kind of thinking we need anymore. We've got to get past this. We need to get to Star Trek thinking. We need to be thinking about like resource allocation, better quality of life for every human being. We need to figure out a way to build a system that's sustainable, that's a closed loop system somehow that operates inside the boundaries of our biosphere in a way that, like, do we need all this stuff? Do we really need a lot of the stuff that we have? Like, consumerism is a manufactured thing. Like, we don't need it. There are other ways to arrange a civilization. And I think to some degree, that's what they're afraid of. If we find out there are other ways to arrange a civilization that are more successful, maybe that means that people would prefer that. Have you read Chains of the Sea, Christian Morales? No, I haven't read it yet, but I have the first book. Lou Elizondo recommended it. It's all about the shadow sphere, AI, UFOs, and the apocalypse, basically. Oh, yeah, you know what? I have it on my Kindle, and I got a few pages into it, and then something else came up, and I never finished it, so I need to go back to Chains of the Sea. Interesting tidbit. I had a friend who was working on air traffic control. Once they saw some strange objects in the radar, and the very next day, people came to adjust the system. That's what they said happened last year with those balloons, that they tuned the tracking systems or the radar systems on our fighter jets to pick up smaller objects than they were normally set up for, or different types of objects. And suddenly they found these things were everywhere. And suddenly we could see them. There have been a number of people who have said the right night vision goggles, not the current generation night vision goggles, but the early, like green ones from back in the early 90s, mid 90s. Those, you could actually see some craft using those. They would show the craft. I know that we've developed domestically our own technology. There was a project that I forget who it was. It was Lockheed, I think, was working on an airship. And on the bottom of the airship, like a blimp, but a big airship that looked like a delta shape. It was almost like imagine a big triangle, but it's an airship. And underneath the bottom of it, the bottom skin of the craft was an LED screen. And that screen could display a video on it of what was going on above the craft. So if you were on the ground looking up at this thing, you would see nothing. It would be completely invisible as it moved past. And this was in development at least 20 years ago, maybe more. So I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff going on. All right, gang. I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there. It's just coming up on 3:30, and I have to bounce out of here. Thank you for watching today. It's so great to see all of you in the chat. I love it. This is awesome. I need to get better at bouncing back and forth with the chat and maybe figuring out how to juggle this a little bit better. But Sage Sleuth, thank you again. You are awesome. I appreciate it. And upcoming news, I am hoping to have another really great interview with the author of the book Initiated, Matthew Roberts, who is going to be, I've been kind of just now emailing back and forth in the last 48 hours, and it looks like we're going to try and set up a time to do an interview. If you haven't read that book, Initiated, it's an excellent book, and it talks a lot about the spiritual overlap between the spiritual connection and the UFO UAP world. We'll be talking more about that in an upcoming video, but I'm looking forward to that interview. I think Sunday I'm going to be talking to the people over at UFOB, the subreddit UFOB, which if you're not familiar with it, you should. If you spend any time on Reddit, go there, r/UFOB. They are just at about 100,000 people in that community, and it's a really great community where they start from a place of this is real and we should take it seriously. So the conversations there are a little bit more orderly, more friendly, and a little higher level, higher speed than what you find in some of the other UFO subreddits. I'm a big fan. So I'll be talking to Remze and Leaf on Sunday, and that'll be on their YouTube channel. I don't know when, but whenever that's done. And yeah, so we got some stuff coming up. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to visit teamnightshift.com. Check it out and get on the mailing list. As soon as I drop the store in the next few days, I'll send out an email to everybody, and hopefully everything goes off without a hitch. Okay, everyone, I'm going to wrap it there. I'll see you on the next one. Keep looking up. Thanks. Ooh.